know, again, this is not our typical YouTube content, but it has been quite a week in our house. So yesterday afternoon, Nate discovered, he saw that Death Valley is officially allowing kayaking and stand-up paddleboarding at Lake Manly at Badwater Basin. And this has been on our bucket list since the first time we saw the flooding there back in like 2018, 2019. Yep. But the water was not near high enough, we couldn't do it. So when we discovered that, he got on Amazon, we ordered kayaks last night, they arrived this afternoon, and we want to take you. We are going to see if we can kayak at Badwater Basin in Death Valley. Can you believe it?
Let's go.
Come join us. It is just about 6 a.m. on Saturday. The sun should be rising in about a half an hour. And here is the story of how we got here. Nate and I drove into the park. We got a campsite by like 9 p.m. and we slept until almost 3 a.m. Then we drove from Furnace Creek to Badwater Basin, pumped up our kayaks, and by 4 a.m. we were out on the water waiting for the sun to rise. Now let me take you back and share a little bit more in depth about our journey this weekend. Our Amazon kayaks delivered just after 3 p.m. and we were on the road by 4. It's still a 5-hour drive from Los Angeles to Death Valley, so it was completely dark by the time we reached the entrance gate. However, the full moon was glowing, the clouds hadn't moved in yet, and we were able to hunker down at our campsite before 10 p.m. So we've got pillows and bed all set up in the back. We're having dinner of champions in the front seat, camping out, ready for a sunrise kayaking at Badwater Basin.
Looking forward to it.
This is the life. We were hoping to shoot some astrophotography, but the clouds started moving in after midnight, and at 3 a.m. we were wide awake, so we got in the car to drive to Badwater Basin to check out the lake for ourselves. As we entered the Badwater Basin parking lot, we could immediately see the water level has risen with the recent February rains, so we pulled out our kayaks and got to work pumping them up and putting them together. For not having any experience, these were wonderful kayaks. We got them inflated and ready to go down to the water's edge within 5 minutes in the dark. However, the moonlight really helped this evening. It's hard to see at 3:30 in the morning, so let me show you a daytime view where the water actually reaches the edge of the boardwalk. Normally where these people are walking in water, it's dry ground. So we had to take our kayaks and walk them out for almost a third of a mile. There was about 6 inches of water, so enough to pull our kayaks out safely, but certainly not enough to get in them and start paddling. Typically, you would be walking out towards the beautiful salt flats here at Badwater Basin, but it is completely flooded. It's about 4:30 in the morning, and we're about ready to see if we can kayak out here. Once the water got deep enough, we were finally able to hop in our kayaks and start heading out on this temporary lake. It was so serene here early in the morning. It might look like the sun is rising in the distance, but that's actually the full moon just peeking out from the clouds before it sets in the morning. And the snow-capped mountains are gorgeous to see reflecting against the water here. So again, this week's video isn't maybe my typical video, but Nate and I found out Thursday that Death Valley was allowing kayaks at Badwater Basin. We hopped on Amazon, we got overnight shipping, and here we are exploring Badwater Basin by kayak. Come join us. It's difficult to capture the scope of this lake right now. As you can see, it just goes on and on for miles. All right, Nate, we have been out on the water for about 2 hours now. First time ever kayaking in Death Valley. What are your first impressions?
Well, first of all, once in a lifetime opportunity. Incredible. It is so calm and peaceful out here on the water. pretty amazing.
It really is. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Dawn, a full-time travel blogger, and every week I take you on a new adventure on my website, flyingdawnmarie.com. And these YouTube videos bring you along with me for a virtual visit. You never know what you're gonna see, so make sure to turn on notifications, like and subscribe, and let's explore together. Lake Manly once covered much of the valley floor here in Death Valley. It was hundreds of miles long and also hundreds of feet deep. However, it dried up thousands of years ago, and it is very rare to ever see this much water, or really any water here. Nate and I were just discussing how truly incredible it is to see this water here. We've stood here, we've shot the night stars, sunrise, and so just to think of the salt flats being completely covered with water is incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable to see this amount of water covering the valley floor.
It really is. For a little bit of perspective, this is a 360-degree view, and we've paddled out 1 mile from the Badwater Basin boardwalk right here. You can see we haven't even scratched the surface of how far the water goes. Currently, Lake Manly is stretching over 6 miles long and 3 miles wide. Now, most recently, this lake developed when the remnants of Hurricane Hilary hit Death Valley. In fact, in one 24-hour period, this national park received more precipitation than it typically does in a year. Nate and I actually visited the day Death Valley National Park opened after the storm damage back in October 2023. And what we were told by NPS officials at the time is probably in the coming weeks to months, Badwater Basin, Lake Manly would completely dry up. However, we've had continued precipitation. In fact, recently in February 2024, we got hit with another large storm here, and the water at Badwater Basin has actually grown. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the future. However, I will say officials are saying that we should expect in the coming weeks and months for the water level to diminish and for Lake Manly to completely dry up by summer. We'll have to see. Drones are strictly prohibited in all of our national parks, including Death Valley. So to capture this perspective, I used my Insta360 X3. The 360 camera creates this unique perspective. No drone necessary. I think it's important to note that since we're out at the salt flats here, it is a little bit like salty, a lot bit salty and muddy. The water is actually only 2.5 feet deep, and that's at the deepest spots. Interestingly, we had to kind of carry the kayaks out into the water because it was under a foot deep for maybe a quarter of a mile, and you should expect to get salty and muddy, but that is just part of the fun here. With the cloudy skies, we didn't get the sunrise we were hoping for, but after a few wonderful hours out on the water, we enjoyed a Pop-Tart breakfast with some still pretty impressive cloudy Death Valley views. So we did spend about $110 on these kayaks, but we are going to reuse them.
Definitely.
For sure. About $45 on gas so far, about $10 on snacks.
Yeah.
And date night like no other.
Yeah.
Priceless. I know I'm gonna receive questions about our kayaks today, so I'm gonna link all that information in the description below. Believe it or not, these are under $60 each, everything included. Inflatable, blow up kayaks, Amazon, under 60 bucks. I highly recommend. It's not quite 9 a.m. and we are finally getting a little bit of sunshine here.
Yep.
This is not the typical Death Valley weather for us.
No, it's been pretty cloudy this morning.
And we come when the stars are going to be out, clear skies for beautiful sunrises. It is interesting. So before sunrise, we paddled out about a mile.
Yep.
And then we've done about another mile since then. And it doesn't even feel like we've scratched the surface.
No.
It's incredible here.
It's pretty neat.
It has been such a joy to share Death Valley's Badwater Basin with you over the years, from the incredible white salt flats to the winter storms which bring the waters over this incredible area, and of course my personal favorite, the starry night skies, and whether I'm watching the Milky Way reflect on the water in the winter or the white salt flats. This is a magical place. However, I'm not sure anything can compare with the experience of kayaking miles and miles here. It has been quite the weekend in Death Valley, hasn't it?
It has. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Indeed, we are thrilled that we're able to share what Badwater Basin is like on kayaks. Now, if you enjoyed this week's video, please hit the like button and subscribe. And I'm going to share all the details of Death Valley and Badwater Basin's temporary lake on my blog post at flyingdawnmarie.com. I have an entire Death Valley section. How many blog posts do we have on there?
Oh, quite a few, well over a dozen.
Well over a dozen Death Valley posts, and make sure to check out Suddenly Sea's Etsy page. I'm gonna link that below because Nate, you have some incredible pictures and content.
T-shirts, yeah.
All from Death Valley. Yeah. So until next week, both Nate and I wish you adventure and encouragement wherever you go.
Bye. What you gonna do now? I got both of the paddles.
I feel so helpless.
This is definitely going on the video. So Dawn, what are you doing over there without a paddle?
You have my paddle on your boat.
I have my how'd that happen?
You stole mine.
I stole it?
I forgot. I pushed you away and I forgot to grab my paddle. Help!
Come to Death Valley and find Dawn in the middle of Lake Manly.
Come save me. Now I don't want to leave you hanging, so yes, somehow I got my paddle back. And if it looks like we're alone out here, well, Badwater Basin is definitely not empty. Once you paddle out past about the mile marker, you won't see anyone. But as you start to make your return to the official Badwater Basin boardwalk, the crowds start to grow. In fact, the water got so shallow that we had to walk our kayaks back to the boardwalk. This is where you'll start to see the crowds walking because the water's only a few inches deep. You'll have paddleboarders, kayakers, and of course, once we were done with our kayaks, we had to haul them back up the boardwalk. What was wonderful about our kayaks is how quickly everything broke down. We just popped the paddles apart and then released the air from our kayaks, rolled them up, and of course we'll clean them up when we get home. Now, this is the view Saturday afternoon in Badwater Basin. The parking lot was completely filled, lots of crowds enjoying the water, and don't forget to visit again next week when I'll be back with a new adventure.